start. It's probably already started. False start, false start. All right, guys, this is Coach Jason. Glad you could join us again. I'm part of the PlayMaker team, and we wanted to talk to you a little bit about transferring. A lot of kids are transferring from four-year colleges to other four-year colleges, as well as transferring from junior college to a four-year college. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the dynamics and things you should expect when you're going through your transferring experience. Just to give you an idea where the perspective is coming from, I started off at the University of New Mexico, was playing there. We had a coaching change. My coach, Bronco Mendenhall, went to BYU to take the head coaching job. And when that happened, the coaching regime shifted all the way around. And so the environment that I originally went into was no longer the same. And so that started my process to try to find a better home, better fit for what I was looking for the remainder of my football career. And ultimately, I started researching schools. I'm originally from the West Coast. I started researching schools on the East Coast and ultimately found myself at Georgetown University, where I graduated from. Had the opportunity to play football there as well. Had a beautiful transfer experience. So just wanted to drop some nuggets on you guys. There's some things that I bumped my head on that you should look out for, but there's also some really good positives that can come out of the transferring experience. So the first thing that you want to do if you're thinking about transferring is identify your why. Are you just transferring because things are a little tough, or is there a real reason? It's our suggestion that if things are a little tough, that you try to figure out a deeper reason, because in life things are going to become tough. Things are not going to always be smooth. So you have to have like a real reason as to why you're transferring, not that it's just harder than you thought it was when you got there. Things like there's more players on the depth chart than you and you don't really see yourself playing. That's a good example. You don't necessarily think that there's a cultural fit with the team or even the school. You don't feel like it doesn't really mesh with your personality or your long-term goals in life. Those are good reasons to transfer. Or if you're just looking for something different, like for example, in my case, I was on the West Coast and I wanted to see what it was like to live on the East Coast. I was born and raised on the West Coast, and I wanted to get a different experience and see what it was like to live in a place like New York or Washington, D.C. So that change of perspective was something that was interesting to me. So you want to have a real reason as to why, not just because you're uncomfortable in that exact moment. So like real things like your coaching regime has changed. Those are the types of things that play into a real reason, a solid reason as to why to transfer. And the reason why you need a solidified reason to transfer is because when you go into your new situation, there's still going to be an adjustment period. So it's not going to just be all roses and smiles when you get into your new situation. You're still going to have that adjustment period. So if you really understand your reason as to why, then it will help you when you make that transition. And so that requires a self-reflection process. You taking the time to sit down, write out your reasons, write out your goals. What is it that you're trying to do? So many of us are used to just running around and using brute force to get, as athletes, we use our athleticism and our physicalities to our benefit, but in the process of really thinking about what you're going to do for your next step in life, you really need to be more introspective and cerebral and think about where it is that you're trying to be in life. And that requires some sitting down, quiet time, reflection, writing down your goals. What is it that you're actually trying to accomplish? Identifying your why and how your why attaches itself to your goals. So really have a good reason as to why you're going to transfer. The second thing that you need to do when you're thinking about your transfer process is really do your research on the schools that you're going to. You don't want to, not that you necessarily made a mistake in your first choice, but you don't want to make a mistake if you're going to make a transition, because you're essentially put yourself in a position where you're wasting time. So you want to really do your research. do your research on the football program, really understand who it is that's on the depth chart, the type of scheme that they run. Do you get along with the head coach, your position coach? You really want to have a comfort level if you're going to make a huge step and make that transition into a new environment. You also want to make sure that you do your research on the academic transferring process, because there could be a situation where you lose a ton of credits and you find yourself essentially taking a step back in your academic years because you lost so many credits in the process of your transfer. So you really want to really understand what classes are going to transfer when you're making that transition, because you don't want to waste any time in class, because who likes taking algebra, calculus, or whatever class it is over and over again if you've already done the work, just because the credits won't transfer. So make sure you do your research and understand that the whole academic process. The other thing is you want to understand is like how is it different economically in the environment that you're going to. Is it more expensive? Is it less expensive? Excuse me. And what's the cost of living from the standpoint of how does rent look? How does gas look? Is it an environment where you need a car? Do you not need a car? These are all things that you really need to understand. So understand the economic and social environment of the new place that you're looking at going into. The next thing that you want to do is really identify what your options are after school. So what are the students that currently go to the school that you're looking at, what are they transitioning off to do? Are they going to work for large companies? Are they going into entrepreneurship? Are a lot of people going to play on professional sports? Really understand kind of what that path is so that you can understand, once again, the type of environment that you're going into. Because when you're prepared, then you can set yourself up, better set yourself up for success, and not be surprised by different things that can happen in that transitionary process. So once again, that is tied to doing your research for the new school that you're looking at going to. So these are all things that really matter and help prepare yourself, fully understanding your why. What is it that is your reason for wanting to transition into a new environment, doing your research on the potentially new school, and making sure that it's a really good fit for you and how it ties to your why and wanting to achieve your goals. And then also understanding what are your opportunities after you transition out, because nobody's career lasts forever. Hopefully you have an opportunity to go on and play at the professional level, but you always need to be realistic and understand what your options are if that opportunity does not present itself. So those are main things that you need to think of. And then one more big item that you need to think about in the process of transferring is understanding what the transfer rules are for in your process of transferring, because you want to make sure that you don't lose any eligibility. So if you're transferring in the springtime, in the summertime, the fall time, or the winter, all of those have different implications as it relates to the transfer rules, and you want to make sure that you do your research on that part. So a good resource to find out what those transfer rules are is going to ncaa.org and looking up transfer students and transfer rules and eligibility in their search box, and a bunch of stuff will come up and you could kind of research what that looks like for you. There are different transfer rules for 4-year to 4-year. There are different transfer rules for junior college to 4-year, as well as different transfer rules for NCAA down to NAIA type schools. So there are different implications for each of those types of processes. So you really want to understand what you're getting yourself into before you jump into it. And then the very last thing that you really want to think about is will your coach release you? So if you're on scholarship, you essentially signed a contract. So it is a very big deal if your coach will not release you. So you can go through this whole process of preparing yourself and getting things set up to transfer, but then your coach won't release you from your scholarship. Now you find yourself in a situation. So make sure that you have a good relationship with your coach and go to him and really lay things out for him, so it doesn't come off as you're betraying or something like that, so that they'll be more prone to release you from your scholarship. Because at the end of the day, these coaches are people too, so they could potentially hold an emotional grudge against you because of your desire or want to transfer. So you want to kind of politic the process a little bit, such that when that time comes, they'll release you from your scholarship. I have seen and have heard of horror stories where coaches wouldn't release kids from their scholarship, so then they found themselves stuck. They didn't want to be there, and because they had raised their hand and said that they wanted to transfer, the coach no longer put them in high priority. So now they're stuck in a position where they can't leave, and then they're also not playing. So they end up making their situation worse because the coach wouldn't release them. Typically, those are typically rare situations, but it does happen. So you want to make sure you prepare yourself, talk to the coach, make sure you have a good relationship with the coach, and give him your reasoning as to why you want to transfer, so that they could release you. All right, guys, that was a bunch of information. I hope that it was helpful. If you appreciated this, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button down below. If you have any questions, leave us a comment. Go ahead and share with as many people as possible, and subscribe. We appreciate you. Thank you for your time. Keep grinding.